My friends, there comes a moment in every person's life when the mirror stops showing a face and starts showing a warning. A warning that time is passing, that dreams are fading, that potential is being wasted. I reached that moment when I was broken, and blaming everything except the man in the mirror. And on that day, I made a decision, a violent, complete decision, to quit everything that was quietly destroying my future. Not to become better, not to become richer, but to stop wasting the life I was given. And when I quit these things, doors opened. Opportunities appeared. Strength returned, and the journey from Baraki to Millionaire began. Today, I want to give you the 7 things I quit. The decisions that transformed my life forever. I quit waiting for the right time. There comes a moment when you realize that waiting is not patience. It is fear wearing respectable clothing. I spent years telling myself, one day I'll start, one day I'll try, one day I'll change. But on day never had a date. It was a convenient hiding place where dreams slowly died without making noise. I quit waiting for the right time because I discovered that the right time is never handed to you. It is created by your courage. Life does not pause for your readiness. Opportunities do not wait until you feel confident. The world rewards the person who steps out while trembling, while uncertain, while unsure. I remember the morning I woke up and realized that if I didn't act now, I would spend the rest of my life replaying this same version of myself, broke, defeated, and filled with invisible potential. I saw that my delays were not innocent. They were expensive. Every hour I waited was building a wall between me and the future I desired. I quit waiting because I understood that the people who succeed are not the smartest or the most talented. They are the ones who start when everyone else is still thinking. They move while others are analyzing. They take steps while others are drawing diagrams. They plant seeds while others debate the weather. The right time is not when conditions are perfect. It is when you decide to act. When I quit waiting, I learned that action creates clarity. Action creates momentum. Action creates opportunities that planning alone can never produce. I began to discover that doors I assumed were locked were actually unlocked. I simply had not pushed them. Waiting holds the illusion of safety. But in reality, it is the most dangerous place to live. Because life keeps moving without you. The world keeps evolving without your involvement. And by the time you feel ready, the opportunity has often passed. I quit waiting because I saw how many dreams die in the grave of hesitation. I refused to bury my purpose there. I refused to let fear disguise itself as caution. I refused to let my future self look back in regret and say, if only I had started sooner. And here is the truth I learned. When you take action, even small action, your confidence grows, your vision sharpens, your steps become stronger, and suddenly, life begins to rearrange itself around your decision. But nothing changes until you change. Nothing begins until you begin. Nothing moves until you move. So I quit waiting for the right time, and the moment I did, the right time appeared. I quit listening to people who had no results. Voices are powerful. They shape your beliefs, they mold your decisions, and they influence your future in ways you cannot immediately see. I spent years listening to people who had opinions, but no achievements, advice, but no discipline, criticism, but no courage. I had to quit listening to them. I quit because I realized something simple. You cannot take financial advice from someone drowning in debt, and you cannot take life advice from someone who has never built one. Yet most people are controlled by voices that speak loudly, but live quietly. I recognized that the people who discouraged me were not evil. They were simply limited. They were speaking from their fears, not my possibilities. Their warnings came from their own failures, not my destiny. And if I continued absorbing their limitations, I would inherit their results. I quit listening to the small-minded. I quit sharing dreams with the unambitious. I quit opening my heart to people who only opened their doubts. The voices you listen to determine the future you walk into. When I stopped listening to the wrong people, The noise in my life decreased. The confusion faded. The direction became clearer. I realized that many people speak from a place of insecurity because your growth threatens their comfort. Your ambition exposes their excuses. Your dreams highlight their stagnation. But I refuse to shrink to make others comfortable. I refuse to downgrade my destiny because someone else lacked courage. I learned to listen only to individuals who lived at a level I wanted to reach. People whose lives were proof, not just words. People whose discipline validated their decisions. People who spoke from experience, not fear. And here is the transformation that happened. Once I filtered my environment, my belief system expanded. I began to see possibilities I never saw before. I began to think in terms of progress, not limitation. I began to imagine myself rising instead of surviving. You are not weak because you listen to the wrong voices. You only become weak when you continue listening after you know better. So I quit listening, and my life changed. I quit making excuses for my painful past. There comes a point in life when you must stop using your past as a cushion and start using it as a catapult. For years, I carried the weight of my history like a badge of suffering. I told myself it was the reason I couldn't rise, couldn't grow, couldn't succeed. My past became my explanation for every limitation in my present. But one day, I woke up and realized something that shook me. My past wasn't holding me back. My excuses were. I quit making excuses for the pain behind me because I discovered a truth I had ignored for too long. The past is a place of reference, not residence. It is a chapter, not the whole book. Yet I was reading the same chapter again and again, wondering why the story never moved forward. I blamed my upbringing. I blamed my lack of resources. I blamed the mistakes others made. I blamed the mistakes I made. I blamed everything except the one thing that could change my life, myself. Excuses are comforting because they remove responsibility. They create a soft pillow on which you can lay your potential to sleep. But they also create a cage where you never grow, never evolve, never break through. I had to quit justifying my pain and start owning my future. I realized that successful people are not exempt from hardship. They simply refuse to use hardship as a justification for staying small. They refuse to let history write their destiny. They refuse to let yesterday poison tomorrow. Every excuse I made was building a wall between who I was and who I could become. And I learned that nothing changes until responsibility enters. Responsibility is not about blame. It is about power. It is the moment you stop saying, "Look what life did to me," and you begin saying, "Look what I can do with what life gave me." When I quit making excuses, I began seeing my past differently. My pain became fuel. My mistakes became lessons. My failures became foundations. I understood that everything I went through was shaping me, not stopping me. Your past is only heavy if you're carrying it. The moment you put it down, the journey becomes lighter, faster, clearer. I had to stop letting old wounds control new chapters. I had to stop allowing what happened behind me to determine what could happen before me. Quitting excuses didn't erase my past. It redeemed it. It transformed it from a burden into a gift that gave me strength, resilience, perspective, hunger. A gift that pushed me toward my millionaire breakthrough. Because when you stop hiding behind excuses, you step into the power to rewrite the rest of your story. That is why I quit, and that is why everything changed. I quit cheap habits that made my life expensive. Many people think becoming wealthy requires adding more skills, more books, more strategies. But sometimes, success doesn't begin with addition. It begins with subtraction. For years, I had cheap habits, small, insignificant actions that slowly drained the greatness inside me. These habits didn't look dangerous. They looked ordinary. But they were lethal. I quit cheap habits because I realized they made my life incredibly expensive. Every minute wasted was a debt. Every distraction was a silent thief. Every lazy night was a stolen opportunity. Every careless decision was a future sacrifice. People often ask, "What changes made you a millionaire?" And I tell them honestly, it wasn't what I started doing. It was what I quit doing. I quit scrolling mindlessly. I quit hanging around time wasters. I quit oversleeping. I quit drifting through days with no plan. I quit spending money on things that made me feel good but kept me broke. I quit feeding habits that didn't feed my life. Cheap habits are expensive because they cost you your focus. And focus is the currency of destiny. Every goal you have depends on your ability to direct your energy with discipline and intention. But cheap habits scatter that energy into pieces. I learned that your habits preach your future long before your success arrives. Your results are simply the echo of your routine. When I quit cheap habits, I found time I never knew I had. Hours opened, energy increased, discipline grew. My mind became sharper, my decisions became cleaner. I began to rise, not because life became easier, but because I stopped making it harder. Millionaire growth is built on intentional living, and intentional living requires subtracting everything that weakens you, mentally, emotionally, financially, spiritually. I quit cheap habits because the cost was too high. And quitting them didn't just change my income, it changed my identity. I quit saying yes to everything. One of the greatest revelations of my life was understanding that saying yes is not generosity. Sometimes it's self-destruction. I lived years as a people pleaser, afraid to disappoint, afraid to be misunderstood, afraid to set boundaries. My yes was cheap, and because it was cheap, my time became cheap. I quit saying yes to everything because I realized every yes steals something: your time, your energy, your focus, your identity, your future. When you don't control your yes, other people control your life. I started noticing that the more I said yes to others, the more I was saying no to myself. My goals suffered, my growth slowed, my dreams shrank. I became busy, but not productive, occupied, but not progressing. The turning point came when I understood this truth: successful people are not people who do everything. They are people who protect their focus. And the only way to protect focus is by mastering the power of no. I quit yes when it was killing my destiny. I quit yes when it meant betraying my purpose. I quit yes when it meant accepting distractions disguised as obligations. Saying no is not rejection, it is direction. When I stopped giving my availability to everything, I discovered I had space for the things that mattered. I had time to grow, time to build, time to think, time to rise. Your yes should be a sacred thing, given with intention, given with clarity, given with purpose. When I learned this, my life stopped scattering and started gathering. Everything aligned, everything advanced, everything multiplied, and I realized something powerful. People respect you more when you respect your own time. That is why I quit saying yes to everything, because I was not born to live a life of reaction. I quit doubting that I deserved more. Doubt is a quiet killer. It doesn't shout. It whispers, but those whispers are enough to shrink your destiny. For years, I battled the belief that I wasn't worthy of abundance, that I wasn't meant for greatness, that wealth was for other people. I lived with a mindset that kept me small, even when opportunities stood right in front of me. I quit doubting myself because I realized doubt is poverty of the soul. You cannot rise higher than the identity you carry. You cannot receive more than what your mind believes you deserve. You cannot step into abundance while holding a mindset of scarcity. When I quit doubting myself, a new world opened. I realized that abundance is not an accident. It is an identity. You must believe you are meant for more before you ever receive more. I quit thinking small. I quit acting small. I quit expecting small. I began declaring that my life had purpose, that my hands were built to create, that my mind was built to build, that my destiny was built to expand. I began treating myself as someone who deserved success, not because of ego, but because of effort, discipline, and willingness to change. Confidence is not arrogance. Confidence is alignment with your potential. When I quit doubting, my decisions became bolder. My vision became wider. My steps became stronger. life responds to the person who believes they belong in the room. And that belief turned my journey from broke to millionaire.